From Transport Topics in Washington, D.C., this is RoadSigns. And now here's your host, Michael Fries.
Thank you for listening to RoadSigns, the podcast series from Transport Topics that explores the trends and technologies that are shaping the future of trucking. By now, we have all read, seen, and heard about the electric truck and how it's poised to usher in a new age in the trucking industry. There's no shortage of information about the many benefits of the electric fleet. But what about the future ahead? As more electric trucks and components are implemented into operation, the conversation will shift from new truck purchases to scheduled truck maintenance, where there's quite a bit of uncharted territory. So for this episode, we'll ask, how are electric truck component manufacturers handling the future unknowns of the eventual part repair service? To answer that question, we'll speak with Tom Lincoln, National Field Sales and Service Manager with Dana Incorporated, later in the show. But first, let's welcome our first guest, Hyliion CEO and founder, Thomas Healy. Welcome to the show, Thomas.
Mike, thanks for having me. Looking forward to this discussion and sharing a little bit more about what we're up to and overall just this massive transformation towards electric vehicles.
Oh, most definitely, most definitely. I just want to say, Thomas, this is my first time talking to a CEO of a publicly traded company, and also too, you are all, unless I am wrong, and someone has surpassed you, you are the youngest CEO of a publicly traded company. Is that still correct?
I think there might have been an individual who's more recently come into the space that took over that title, but you are right. I did get that title when we first went public, and now honored to be here on the show with you. And yeah, no, it's been a fun journey being a public company here over the last couple of years, and being in this new space. And ultimately, it's been a tool for Hyliion that's been invaluable to let us really go grow this organization.
I'm sure the trucking industry and the logistics industry is welcoming you and your company with open arms. Your company, of course, creates electric powertrains that can be augmented or actually replace diesel and natural gas powertrains. And you also deal with battery management systems and battery packs. One thing that I wanted to go into just before we kind of get into the maintenance of things, but just kind of the whole sales side of it, and just in dealing with the powertrains and battery packs, which you do. It's one thing to tell prospective partners about electrification and how beneficial it is to their fleets, but what ultimately allows fleets and trucking companies to buy into the new landscape of EVs? What have you seen being in this space?
Sure. So, I mean, maybe just start off here. Just kind of like the 30,000 foot. What's going on in trucking and this shift towards electric. And the way we look at it is electric is happening. I don't think anyone's doubting that at this stage. Maybe a few years ago you would have some people saying, is it really going to take place or not? But now I think everyone's bought in. Electric is going to happen. But the reality is there is not a one size fits all solution out there that's going to be the future. I mean, we're kind of in a weird way, we're fortunate right now. Diesel is kind of this one size fits all. That's the world today, but and that's made it easy to adopt trucks in this space. But the reality going forward is electric won't be that way. You're going to have different vehicles for short haul, final mile, than the long haul space. And the way we see it playing out is the industry is really going to break down into two different buckets. You're going to have short haul and long haul. In the short haul space, plug-in vehicles make a ton of sense. Utilize the grid, utilize that battery, utilize that electricity to charge those batteries. And then when you look at the long haul space, though, the size and the weight of the battery packs and the load you need to put on the grid in order to charge them for traveling 500, 600 miles a day, it just doesn't work. The math doesn't work out. And that's where we see that long haul space really needs electric range extender vehicles, which is where we're focused. And, we see that there's various fuel types you can use. You can use natural gas down the road. You can use hydrogen. But I'm sure we'll dive into more of that as we go through this discussion here.
Oh yes, of course. Speaking of that, I definitely wanted to talk about the Hypertruck Innovation Council and just kind of the collaborative effort. But I guess with this next question, you might lead into that. but just in that sense, as I was saying, when you were introducing I wouldn't say new. I mean, it's not. I wouldn't even say fairly new, but like you're introducing this new a particular product, the electric vehicle to fleets, and it's still, I mean, it's bought. I mean, especially with the electrical components, they're bought, and then we're kind of all entering into this space when we're talking about electrical vehicles into the maintenance side of things. And when these, these fleets are going to have electrical vehicles and the parts that are in them for a while. And I just kind of want to talk about those, the phrase famously said by Donald Rumsfeld, the known unknowns, the potential known unknowns of maintenance. Well, for this particular conversation, what are those types of challenges when it comes to electric trucks?
Sure. And, I think the first thing is just companies like ours realizing that maintenance is a huge thing for fleets, right? I mean, they can't sign up for a truck that's going to be sitting in the shop every month with a problem. And so that's where, as we bring solutions forward, we need to keep that in mind. And ultimately, when you think about electric, the overall goal is these vehicles are less maintenance than a normal powertrain. I'll give you a great example of this. When I bought a Tesla a couple of years ago, I was at the dealer and I asked the gentleman, the salesman, I was like, all right, so what's the maintenance cycle that I need to be bringing this thing in on? And his response was, just bring it in when it breaks. We don't have a maintenance cycle. Like, if there's a problem with it, bring it in. Otherwise, just keep driving. And that's really one of the neat things with electric is there aren't those, kind of wear and tear parts that need to go through consistent maintenance, maybe like a passenger car or obviously a conventional diesel truck would need to go through. So the other aspect of electric though is, the while there's less wear and tear components, the actual way that these vehicles get fixed, I believe, is going to be different than a conventional truck as well. Like when you think about pulling in a truck today into a shop, the technician's going to dive in and really try to root cause the problem and actually fix that specific thing. Like it's the technicians are trained to really go fix a problem. I think going forward here, at least for the next handful of years, technicians are going to be asked to more do replacements of parts as opposed to actually fix the problem. So, for instance, if you have a problem inside of your battery pack, until you have technicians that are fully trained up on how to service batteries and have the proper high voltage equipment, it's much easier just to do a replacement of that battery pack. And then companies like Hyliion will take those components back, refurbish them, and have them as spare parts, as opposed to having there be a instance where a technician's actually opening up a battery. So that's going to be a paradigm shift for this industry.
With that paradigm shift, I mean, how far do you see that curve kind of getting to that particular point? I mean, are we in the beginning of that curve? Are we in the middle?
I think we are just scratching the surface with electric vehicles. And when you look at it, I mean, the only electric trucks that are out there are really still prototype pilot units. I mean, we are not in a society where we are full scale production. I'll actually, yeah, I've used this before in some speeches. I say where, the general public outside of trucking thinks that, geez, there's got to be, thousands and thousands and thousands of electric trucks out on the road. Everyone's talking about it. It's happening. That's not the reality. It's more, it's almost like the general public thinks it's already happened. Fleets are at a point where they want it today, but in most instances they can't get vehicles. And then suppliers are there saying, "Hey, I'm working as hard as I can to get these vehicles done to supply this customer base." But we're still going through the product development and testing and validation. It's not fully baked yet, and so it's kind of this mix.
From time to time, an issue commands so much of the industry's attention that it requires a deeper dive, a resource readers can turn to, a Transport Topics special report. We're turning our attention to another big issue, electrification and the key factors that will drive this industry trend. In every case, we're working to provide our readers with information, analysis, and clarity on key issues confronting fleets. One comprehensive resource packed with insights that can give you the edge. Transport Topics invites you to learn more about our special reports. To reserve your copy of the latest special report, visit ttn.ws/electrification.
With those, some of the challenges you have there, and that's just with a perfect, business environment, meaning a well performing supply chain, which we kind of don't have right now.
Which we
So that
don't have. Let's be honest. It's a mess.
yeah. So I mean, it just kind of, I mean that kind of hampers things as well. I mean, that's sort of a, the ghost in the system there. I mean, with those particular problems too, and you have this development that is coming. It's not, there's not too much resistance to that. So I mean, does that play a little bit into that, or or is this just kind of full steam ahead with what you're doing?
No, we're seeing supply chain definitely play into it across the board. We're seeing, normally, as crazy as this sounds, it's usually the $5 part that is the thing that when you get to go build the system, you're missing, and you talk to the supplier, and they say, "Hey, it's a 52-week lead time," and it's like, "Crap, what are we going to do now?" Right? And then you ultimately end up sending it over to the engineering team. You say, "Hey, design this part out of it, or choose some other supplier to use," and so it's not just worrying about the batteries or the motors. It's every single line item in that bill of material you need to make sure that you've ensured supply on. We saw a massive issue recently with connectors, and just shortages of connectors for wiring harnesses. And this is not just Hyliion seeing this. This is every automotive manufacturer out there seeing it as well. So no, it goes down to the individual piece part can disrupt the supply chain, and then the other thing that affects kind of our going to market is ultimately we need chassis and trucks to put our solution on. And as you know, the backlog for new truck builds is enormous. I think we're out past 12 months, probably even north of that right now. And for us, it's that aspect of getting the actual truck for the hybrid system, installing it after the OEM makes it, and then getting it back out to the customer.
Speaking of that, and just kind of dealing out with the part shortage, and just kind of navigating through the components that you're selling and the services that you provide, the your involvement with the Hypertruck Innovation Council and that collaborative effort. I mean, you have for hire carriers such as Penske and Ryder in there, but you also have the private fleets as well, such as Weekman's and Anheuser Busch. Just want to, I just want you to talk about that just a little bit more, just kind of elaborate on that, on that collaborative effort, and just kind of your expectations of what you want to achieve and working with those particular companies when it comes to commercial trucking.
Yeah, so the thing we wanted to avoid was bringing a technology to market, having spent years developing it, and then fleets to say, "Hey, you didn't design this right. You didn't design this with the fleet, the customer, in mind." And so what we said is, "Hey, the best way to get around this, or to make sure we don't do this, is actually invite these fleets to come to the table with us and give us guidance, give us advice, give us suggestions as we go down this journey of developing this great product." And so we've had great interactions with these fleets. These fleets have, expressed interest in running the technology in their operations. Many of them have come down to Austin, actually gone for rides in the trucks and experienced them firsthand. Some of them have actually brought the trucks out to their locations to let, a broader group of their drivers actually be able to experience them. And the benefit is we get this feedback early on in the cycle of developing a product, so that if they have, a suggestion, and I'll give you one to put an example to it. We'd mounted our tablet inside the truck where we're given information to the driver, and we kind of mounted it like up near the sun visor, sort of an area. And it's not something the driver needs to look at frequently, but every once in a while, take a glance at it. And one driver gave us feedback that he's like, "Hey, look, I wear bifocals, and I can't go from looking at the road to looking up, and then looking back down at the road. It doesn't work. It messes with my vision because of the glasses I wear." And so that's like invaluable feedback that we're getting on the front end, that we can then go back to our engineering team and say, "Okay, we need a new location for this tablet. We need to make it more driver friendly." And that's only feedback you're going to get when you're actually working hand in hand with the customers.
Well, it's great that you're working with carriers on this product. As you said, it's best to work with the consumer, firsthand when you're developing these particular types of services. One last question, Thomas, before I get you out of here. One of the things, you like you said previously, you had talked about the 30,000 foot view of things. And even afterward, you had spoken about just kind of the maintenance of things, and just kind of how things will be easier in the sense of, instead of quote unquote fixing things, you can just replace them. But there's still a particular type of training involved when it comes to working with electric trucks and electric components. What do you see in the future with your company, and in the industry, your segment in particular, in general, where you see this is kind of the communication factor and the education a part of it too, of working with fleets and teaching them, the ins and outs of the EV maintenance of the products that you make. Where do you kind of see that in the future? I mean, do you envision certain partnerships such as the Innovation Council, or a different particular route?
So our approach or philosophy, it's not the same as everyone else's, but this is the way we're going, is trying to stay an asset light model, which means we're going to leverage the existing infrastructure already in place in order to really optimize our solution. And so from a service standpoint, that means partnering up, working with other providers who already have technicians, already have locations all across the US to be able to enable our solutions to be pulled into those service centers and be fixed. Now, the one thing that we see is going to be a big differentiator for us, and likely just part of the future ahead here, is going to be the software on these vehicles. What's we found to be really interesting is through the data that we collect off these trucks, we can often pinpoint what the problem is on a vehicle before it even gets pulled into a shop. We're getting data feedback from all the different components on the vehicle, and we're looking at how are they performing? Are they working? Are they not? Are they overheating? Or are they not running at the right RPM? Or whatever the aspect might be. We get to see that all in the cloud remotely, and we actually get to diagnose these vehicles before they even get in front of a technician. So what we see is this is going to be able to allow us to improve the efficiency of service, because if you already know what's wrong with the truck before it shows up at a location, you can make sure that that location already has the parts needed in order to fix that truck and get it out back on the road. And then similarly, you can already tell the technician before they even see the truck what they're going to be working on, what training they need in order to properly, be able to make that fix. And then when they actually get their hands on the asset, it's a much faster process in order to get that truck out on the road. And as you know, this is an industry focused on uptime, right? It's all about asset utilization and keeping these trucks running. That's how you make money. And, if you can make service more efficient, then you're helping with that cost.
Yeah, most definitely. The last thing that a fleet or a trucking company wants to see is a truck that's on downtime and in the shop, versus being on the road, making revenue. So
It's not making them money if it's sitting in a yard somewhere, right?
exactly, exactly. We've been speaking with Hyliion CEO and founder Thomas Healy. Thomas, it's been a pleasure having you on, and thank you for making us smarter.
No, appreciate it, and look forward to many exciting years ahead, and in what should be a massive transformation for this industry. So exciting years to come.
Transport topics in one word: authoritative.
Knowledge.
Outstanding.
Reliable.
We ask transport topics readers to describe us in one word.
Informative.
Informative.
Integrity.
The Bible. Authoritative.
The authority.
Transportation information, that's two, but I gotta have it both.
Physically large. Oh, that's two words.
Visit influence.ttnews.com/say hello to find out what they're talking about.
Welcome back to Road Signs. In addition to the discussion we're having about the development of electrical truck components and its maintenance, we have decided to bring along another Tom. But this particular Tom is from Dana Incorporated. He is the National Field and Sales Service Manager, Tom Lincoln. Welcome to the show, Tom.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me, Michael. Pleasure to be here.
No problem at all. No problem at all. It's nice to have another Tom on the show as well. But yes, getting into electrical vehicle components and its maintenance. One of the things that I asked our previous guests, and I'm going to pose it to you as well, is just having, it's one thing that we have this newer technology of electric vehicles. And, it's been, it's kind of in our society, it's sort of that shiny object. And in this particular case, it's been shining for quite some time. So once we kind of get over that shine, we kind of have to talk about the maintenance of these components and just kind of what it would take. So my question to you is just kind of those particular known unknowns when it comes to maintenance challenges, and just kind of encountering that over the thousands of miles that that takes place in the testing of trucking applications. So I just kind of wanted to talk about that and what do you see as the potential of those unknown things when it comes to maintenance.
Yeah, sure. So, as the question suggests, we're talking about unknowns, and like any major tier one component manufacturer and supplier. We work with our partner OEMs and do extensive, durability testing, track testing. But as you said, hundreds of thousands of miles that these commercial trucks are going to run over their life. There are things that are going to happen that doesn't show up in testing that you can't plan for. And it takes time to accumulate all those miles in a real world. So as we talk to fleet customers today, these unknowns are certainly on the top of a lot of their minds. We get that question a lot. You look at battery electric vehicles in general. We're typically looking at vehicles that contain, give or take, 40% fewer moving parts than conventional diesel powered truck. We're talking about trucks that no longer have emission systems. Speaking specifically about Dana's solutions, if you look at what we have in the market today, we're typically talking about single speed direct drive motors, meaning we don't have any transmissions or gearboxes. At a high level, the architecture of these vehicles is very, very, very simple. I think what we'll find over time is that the powertrain itself is going to be pretty reliable. If you're looking at the traction motor and the inverter that drives the vehicle, I think we're gonna be pleased long term with that solution. But at the end of the day, I think we have to acknowledge one of the things we haven't eliminated is wiring. If you look at the schematic for a typical battery electric vehicle, I don't think you're talking about an architecture that's any more complex than a diesel powered solution today. I may even propose that you could likely have less external wiring, meaning wiring connecting components on a battery electric than you'd have on a diesel today. Especially when you consider all the sensors and controls required for things like emissions and automated manual or automatic transmissions or electronically controlled engines. But you still do have wiring. You've got a lot of components, new systems that you need to connect on a battery electric vehicle. Auxiliary systems like electric power steering, electrical HVAC systems, electric air compressors for braking systems, DC to DC converters. I think we'll probably continue to see some of those similar challenges to wiring that we see on diesel powered trucks today. But I think we're optimistic that hopefully it'll be on a smaller scale, given the reduced complexity and the simplified architecture of the vehicle.
One of those things, Tom, that you were just talking about, where you touched upon that, the e-powertrain. Is that particular component, will that be much more? I wouldn't say. I don't want to say hassle. I say that for lack of a term that's kind of escaping my head right now. But the electrical axles or the e-powertrain. I mean, is there one particular item in the electric space that's going to be more of a concern versus others going forward when it comes to maintenance?
Getting back to the simplicity of the architecture, you look at the TM4 drive motors that we're producing and providing to a number of OEMs today. I mean, these are non-serviceable components. I say non-serviceable. There's no lubrication required. They do have a cooling loop, and you will have to at intervals replace coolant, no different than you would in a diesel powered vehicle today. But there's no grease points. There's no oil that needs to be swapped or replaced over time. So I mean, it's really a sealed for life component. It's a very simple, straightforward component that just doesn't have a lot to it. Very, very few moving parts. So I think looking just specifically at the propulsion system, again, it's very simple. The inverter that controls it is a solid state electronic device. There's no moving parts inside of the inverter. Like all inverters, it does have a set of isolated gate bipolar transistors or IGBTs that do have a cycle life and won't make it 20 years, but their life will depend on the route and the application that they're run in. But they would probably be the one component that I could see, at least in the primary drive system, having potentially a replacement at some point in the vehicle's life. But even having to replace a set of IGBTs is a much more approachable position than having to replace an entire diesel engine.
With that, you talk about the I guess the the lack of actually going into that part versus some like a diesel technician you would go in and address certain components of a particular part, where electrical, that role that the tech would play in that service and maintenance aspect of it will change dramatically on a large scale. What's Dana's approach to communicating those particular expectations to those fleets when it comes to electric vehicle parts and maintenance?
It's it's funny you ask. We've been having this conversation more and more frequently, of late, internally and with customers, with some of our OEM partners. If you look at the modern, kind of top tier technician at a OEM shop today, these technicians are very tech savvy. They understand very complex control systems for today's modern, emissions equipped diesel engines. When you look at servicing and supporting battery electric vehicles, the days of this vision of rolling your toolbox over and spending 2 days on 3 days on an overhaul, that's not going to be the case. But the vision, the picture you might have of a technician sitting in the cab of a truck with his laptop on, running through different diagnostic systems and programs to understand the root cause of a failure. That is certainly going to be part of the landscape with battery electrics. And I think those technicians that have strong diagnostic capabilities and skills today are going to adapt to this space very well, really. And just kind of taking a step back or a little bit higher level, I think our approach in the battery electric space is really going to leverage what's worked for us on the conventional hard park side of our business for decades. That means working closely with our OEM customers to ensure that their aftermarket's ready to support these solutions before production trucks hit the road. So they have these component level service part numbers set up and they're released in the system, and that most importantly that the dealer network has visibility and access to those parts. Should they happen to see a battery electric truck in one of their shops. We're also working with those OEMs on ensuring that those dealer technicians are trained and ready when these vehicles hit the road. So our goal is really to leveraging our relationship and our history with the OEM dealers. Our goal is to make the fleet service experience with battery electric solutions mirror that level of support and responsiveness that they get from Dana today on their traditional axle and drive shaft offerings. Again, we're I think we're all new to the battery electric space, but organizations like Dana, we're not new to commercial vehicle. We're not new to the ecosystem that these trucks are operating in and being serviced and supported by. So we're really trying to leverage that infrastructure and that network and those systems that we've built over years, supporting our conventional hard parts and just adding or adapting those existing systems to support our battery electric offerings.
And adding to that infrastructure that you have already dealing in the commercial vehicle space, is that one of the pain points involved when you are talking to fleets concerning parts and maintenance? I mean, or those things that you mentioned, that the aftermarket aspect of it, and working within the dealer network, making sure that the parts are there and the communication is there. I mean, are those the particular pain points that have been addressed from the fleets that have spoken with you?
That's the concern I think we hear from fleets. I don't know if it's a realized pain point at this point in the process, but it's something that's top of mind for them. And it's encouraging, I think, to a lot of the fleet customers that we talk to, that as we have conversations with them and with our OEM partners, that we're not trying to reinvent the wheel. In a lot of cases, our OEM partners aren't trying to reinvent the wheel. Again, we've as a component supplier and as our OEM customers as truck manufacturers, we've been delivering product into the space and supporting these types of customers with conventional products for years. It's just a matter of getting that structure, that network ready for a new product. It's the same customers who are really performing the same job. It's just a new tool that we're giving them, but there's no reason that tool can't use the same structure and resources that we've developed over years to support them today.
One thing, Tom, that I want to touch upon that you have mentioned was just kind of the simplicity of it, and just taking this complex concept and really breaking it down, just for the communication between your customers and the trucking professionals who are going to have their hands on the e-powertrains and the electric axles. Several years ago, Dana did release a training series, concerning, safety and maintenance, with EVs and geared toward the maintenance professionals. But as we just discussed, the EV segment has advanced since then, and it's much more on the radar with the trucking industry than it has been in previous times. So, how has Dana kept up with those advances, and to provide efficient training, for your customers today?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the series of training videos. Yeah, we released a series of short training videos, and they were incredibly well received. A lot of positive feedback from end use fleets, customers, as well as repair shops. We're continuing to develop content for those. I'd expect that you're going to see some more of those in the very near future. Again, very well received. I thought they were done very well. More broadly, I think as this market kind of continues to grow and Dana continues to expand what we're offering, the technology is really shaping our business, and it's also shaping our organization. I don't know if you caught it, but we announced last year that we opened a sustainable mobility center on our campus, our world headquarters in Maumee, Ohio. It was really built as a primarily a development and technology center for future vehicle programs. But we also, when we built that building, we carved out space in the facility to support live instructor-led and hands-on training. So since its opening, we've hosted a number of OEMs and fleet customers, and we're looking forward to expanding the use of that facility to work more closely with our OEM partners and develop some additional battery electric content for some of the specific truck platforms that we're working jointly with them to release. And in addition to that, the OEMs themselves are building out training modules for their dealers, technicians, and their customers. We're supporting them as they build out those programs, and kind of similar to our approach with aftermarket readiness. We're leveraging, and they're leveraging tools and structures that they have in place to support their conventional products. So, if you look, most of the OEMs today have developed great training tools, great training programs for their legacy diesel products today. And the go forward plan for a lot of these OEMs is to leverage that existing structure, that existing platform to support training and development of dealers and customer technicians and battery electric solutions. So, I think that's the thing that I keep coming back to is Dana as well as our OEM partners. We've built a lot of great tools over the years to support our conventional products, and I think our vision and a lot of our OEM partners' vision is to leverage what we have and just add the content and the resources specific to battery electrics, but take advantage of what we built over the years.
It's really vital to be well positioned, especially in this particular time when EVs are, we're kind of going past the introduction phase on this, and really kind of getting into implementation, and then soon after get into that maintenance space, and just try to figure out the best use when it comes to the OEM and their partners. It's definitely it's going to transform just the way we see the tech space when it comes to commercial vehicles at large. We've been speaking with Tom Lincoln, National Field Sales and Service Manager with Dana Incorporated. Tom, it was a great pleasure speaking with you, and thanks for making me and our listeners very much smarter.
Well, thank you, Michael. I appreciated it. Appreciate the time, and have a great day.
Did you know you can ask Alexa to open Transport Topics? In just 1 minute, you will hear the biggest trucking headlines of that day. Be prepared and start your morning off right with Transport Topics.
Before we close, let's take a moment to revisit our original question. How are electric truck component manufacturers handling the future unknowns of eventual part repair service? First, a huge thank you to both Tom Lincoln and Thomas Healy for joining us in addressing the future of electric vehicle maintenance. As we heard from both of them, the future of electric is definitely bright, but not too bright to notice the blind spot of eventually maintaining electric trucks. The common theme communicated by both men touches upon not only methods and process, but the landscape of maintenance itself. With technology such as telematics and automation already ushering in a phase in truck repair where a wrench is replaced with a tablet, the soon wave of electric fleets will change the what and how a technician fixes. And with the collaborative work, for instance, from the Technology and Maintenance Council and the Hypertruck Innovation Council from Hyliion, there's plenty of groundwork in motion to make the future unknowns of electric truck scheduled maintenance known. If you enjoyed this episode of Road Signs, please let others know. Rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you listen to podcasts. If my questions have sparked questions of your own, share them with the Road Signs team or reach me on Twitter at Michael V. Fries. You can email us at share@ttnews.com. We'll read them and respond daily. And of course, we'll be back in 2 weeks with a new episode of Road Signs. Until then, I'm Michael Fries. Thank you for listening.